I'm going to make a quick observation. I saw a headline about the president's attempts to basically destroy U.S. science research in American universities. This is part of several things happening at once. One over at OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, where OMB Chief Russell Vought is attempting to make himself the sole veto point for all science grants. And then also, they want to cut research funding for basic science and redirect it to AI, which sounds stupid to me, because it is. The effect of this would be to destroy American research universities, which are heavily reliant on federal funds. So that's one thing. The other thing is that Donald Trump is once again saying that he'll run for a third term. He said he wants to be president again, and he's been talking about a third term.
All these buildings, plants, factories that we're talking about start opening up. All I know is I'd like to be the next president. But just like my presidency, the second time is always better. It's always better. And the third time will be better yet. I'm only kidding.
Now, these things don't seem related, but they are related. When you look at the elite conversations over the problems in, say, higher education and American politics, you get a focus on polarization amongst people. We're all so polarized, and that's why we can't come together and do things, and the sense that universities are out of touch. I think this is very persuasive to people who want to imagine themselves as of good faith, of trying to find common ground, of trying to stitch together some kind of consensus. Maybe even people who feel that as liberals, for example, that they are rightfully being disparaged for being out of touch, not really understanding the needs of ordinary people. I happen to think that this liberal self-flagellation is a little self-indulgent, maybe even a little self-aggrandizing. And I also think this lack of confidence, this liberal self-flagellation, is genuinely detrimental to trying to deal with the problem of the radical right. And that's because, you see where I'm going here, the problems, I don't think, are with higher education necessarily being out of touch or American politics being hyperpolarized. It's certainly the case that higher education has a lot of problems, a lot of issues. For me, chief among them is the obsession with elite status. There are constant fights over, say, affirmative action, when you could solve some of this problem just by Harvard admitting 4 times as many students, but then it wouldn't be as exclusive. And the pursuit of exclusivity, the extent to which we treat higher education like a consumer good, I think is a much bigger problem than a lot of the stuff people are focused on, than whether or not there are enough conservatives in literature departments. And there are certainly lots of problems in American politics. We talk about them all the time on this channel. But when it comes to the political right, I don't think their attacks on American democracy are because of some discontent, of some being left behind. The same way I don't think the attacks on higher education are for the same reason, discontent, being left behind. Again, I think that's kind of self-flattering. And I think it posits liberals, or the broad center-left of American life, as being the only entities with agency. No, the reason why the political right has become so aggressively hostile to democracy, as represented by Donald Trump's attempts to keep himself in office for a third term, is because they've taken a dim view of democracy. You only have to go read what's being put out at places like the Claremont Institute or the Heritage Foundation to see an open contempt and disdain for democracy, an open contempt and disdain for the ability of people to choose their own leaders. Project 2025 is modeled over Viktor Orban's authoritarian takeover of Hungary. They're open about this. They're not trying to hide it. And in the same way, much of the right-wing attack on higher education is because they don't like higher education. They don't like the idea of a broadly educated citizenry. It's actually part and parcel of the same thing. They are opposed to science research. They are opposed to broad education in the humanities. They're opposed to anything that might inculcate in people a sense that they are equal to those of presumably higher status, equal to the wealthy, equal to the powerful. They don't like those things. It's a hierarchical political movement. They want people to stay in their place. And one thing education does is it tells you that your place is wherever you want it to be. and that no one has the right to put you in a place. Democracy is built on the idea of equality among peoples, political equality. We all count equally, ostensibly. Our votes count equally, our say counts equally. That's the ideal form. And much of the struggles of American democracy has been trying to make that ideal a reality. But yes, a starkly hierarchical political movement dedicated to preserving stark hierarchies of race, of gender, and wealth is not going to be happy with political systems that are egalitarian in their ideal form, nor will they be happy with mass public education, especially mass higher education. And I really think it's time to recognize that part of what's happening here, a big part of what's happening here, is not that there are misunderstandings. It's not that we're talking past each other. It's that we are opponents. It's that we are opposed to each other on key values. That isn't everyone who cast a ballot for a Republican, but certainly for Republican elites, conservative elites, the intellectual class, the billionaire class, the people funding these parties, guys like Elon Musk, Silicon Valley reactionaries who are all obsessed with neo-monarchist thought. Yes, when it comes to those people, they're our enemies. we are opposed to them. We're not talking past each other. There's no common ground we can find. I'm very fond of Abraham Lincoln's House Divided speech, in large part because it is so much more hard-nosed than how I think we remember it in the present. Today, we think of the House Divided speech as being about how we all have to come together. But that's not what Lincoln was saying. A house divided will not stand. The nation cannot be half slave and half free. It will either become all of one thing or all of the other. Lincoln was saying, we can't compromise. We can't do both things at once. Either we're going to be a slave country or we're going to be a free country. That's the choice. It was an ultimatum. It wasn't a paean to centrism. And in the same way, in the same spirit, there might not be compromise with people who want to destroy American universities. There might not be compromise with people who think that presidents should be able to serve even if the public doesn't want them there, should be able to throw away a nearly 3-century tradition of American democracy to hold on. There might not be compromise. It might just be that we are on different sides and that the task ahead of us isn't to come together, but to win.